Good evening. I am Steve. This is my rock and metal life. And tonight we are going to go back to 1998. And why in the world would we want to do that? Well, we're looking back at albums that came out 25 years ago. And what's led me here is because at the first of the year, several of the music news sites had some look backs on the records that have turned 20, 25, 30 years uh, as of 2023. And for whatever reason, I never really look at these usually, but the one from 1998 really caught my eye. And I looked through it on Ultimate Classic Rock, and man, oh man, is this a snapshot of what 1998 truly was for me, and I think probably for a lot of people in my situation. Uh, just a real quick history, because if I go into too much depth, it'll go on forever. But uh, when I got into hard rock and heavy metal, late 70s, early 80s, like 79, 80, um, rock music was very popular, very lucrative, but, in the mainstream, uh, it was still the legacy acts of, Frank Sinatra and, Elvis and whomever, were the widely known acts that were popular and big figures in the pop culture, I guess you would say. But rock music was extremely successful with Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and Aerosmith and people like that. And it was kind of one of those things, the hard rock, the heavy stuff. It was like if you knew, you knew. If you were in the club, you were in and you knew all about it. But there were people walking around, that probably didn't know too much about what was really going on in that world other than, ooh, Kiss, Kiss is this, whatever they are, or, Rod Stewart or Elton John. Yeah, those are rockers. But the heavy stuff, kind of underground, even though the concerts were full and the records were selling pretty good. And then in the 80s, it really became mainstream and, the concerts got bigger. The album sales got more and more and more. The success just became greater and greater. And I walked around for most of the 80s just feeling like I was right. I told you. These guys are huge. This is everybody loves this stuff. It's popular all around the world. Then came the 90s and I don't want to go too in depth on that, but everything changed. And what I liked and what used to be cool was pretty scarce and laughed at in a lot of circles. And, you can blame Nirvana, you can blame whoever you want to blame. But, the 90s, strange decade for me because I got married in the 90s, in the early part. I bought my first house midway through. Uh, my son was born at the end of the 90s. I started making real money. Uh, got into my career that I had trained for and, was no longer, barely making it. A lot of good things happened in the 90s. A great decade for movie making and stuff like that. And yet, when I think of the 90s, man, I think about, my music just being obliterated and made to be uh, like, it wasn't just old and out of step. It was like, from 100 years ago, not just as recent as it was. And so as the decade went on, you know, to see what a lot of my bands were doing and how they were trying to get by, Van Halen, they remained big. They didn't really take too much of a hit. Uh, AC/DC, they were just fine. Aerosmith did fine. The new formula that was very different from the 70s. Hey, they were doing okay. But there was so much, going off in different directions. And, some of the big high profile bands, lost their singers like Motley Crue, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest. It was just like this hodgepodge of, here's where everybody's at. And I look at this this list that they put on Ultimate Classic Rock, and I think, my God, that's exactly where we were at the time. So I'm just gonna go through a few of them. They had 25 of them on there. I got like 8 or 10 here. I don't know. Union. This is a band. Bruce Kulick and John Corabi. Um, and I'm gonna say this about a lot of these discs that I'm gonna hold up. This is a pretty good record. It's not great. It's not awesome. It's not terrible. Um, it's not widely known. A lot of people don't even know this thing exists. But I was reading all the music news at the time, and anything, the internet was new. So it's like, hey, my stuff's not on the radio, and I'm certainly not going to see it on MTV. And boy, I hope some concerts come around here, but they're not coming around like they used to. So I would read stuff like this, and man, I'd get the CD as soon as I can. I actually saw Union open for Cinderella uh, down at, gosh, it was called Billboard Live at the time, and it's still there, but it's called something else now. Right next to the Roxy, I believe. But anyway, here's John Corabi. He's not Motley Crue anymore. Here's Bruce Kulick. He's not in Kiss anymore, and they're collaborating. And they put out a good record, good not great. Around Again was a song that you could hear if you were looking for it. But hey, there's a 1998 record. All right, let's go to my guys, Van Halen. Favorite band, quite obviously, Van Halen 3. Not a bad record. It's Gary Cherone. Doesn't sound like just about anything else they did. Songs are good. Edward is, he's elite, brilliant guitar player. They got some catchy songs on here. The single and the video, the piano intro, New World, and uh, the song Without You, and a lot of criticism for the song being too long, uh, and kind of like losing its direction. I love it. I absolutely love that song. It's probably, I don't know if it's on my top 10, but it's like on maybe my top 15 list of Van Halen songs. I just love the song. I love the intro. Video was pretty cool, pretty cutting edge. Had the Matrix camera set up, where it rotates around the subjects like that. That was pretty cutting edge. But the end of Van Halen for a while right here, because it didn't go over well. And I know MTV gave it a big send off. They had a special with Matt Pinfield, talking with the band, and kind of had the feeling like it was going to be just fine, because they hadn't really, their album sales hadn't sunk yet. But it did not do well, as we well know. Next thing you know, everybody's back in the band. Hagar comes back, and Roth comes back, and so speaking of which, same year, the DLR band, and this thing here, once again, not bad, pretty good stuff on here. It doesn't sound like the Van Halen stuff too much. It doesn't sound like Skyscraper or Eat 'em and Smile. Good songs on here that you'd have to have this CD to know that they're even out there. Now, I always liked What Was That? I thought that was pretty cool. Little Texas, a pretty good jam. You know, I don't know, King of the Hill, I think is probably my favorite song on here. Did okay, but his trajectory's going the wrong way at this point. And that's 1998 for David Lee Roth. Not too long after that, he's touring with Sammy Hagar on a train wreck of a tour. So here's another one, Anthrax, Volume 8, The Threat Is Real. This is Anthrax with John Bush. This is a good record. This is a really good record. But it's something that, the threat is real, but you might not think that the CD is real, because the record company, what is it, Ignition? Like, I want to say literally the day after this was released, the record company went bankrupt, and they were just left, with no promotion. The song Crush, the song Catharsis, this comes right out of the box, really strong, and I really like this. And then they got a really bizarre song, Toast to the Extras, which is a, slow, almost ballady song, nothing to do with anything that Anthrax ever did before. But anyway, this is good stuff, but You know, you had to be a private detective to uncover the fact that it was even out there at the time. Uh, so we went through, the two factions of Van Halen. Uh, this also came out that year. Two, the band, the one-off band by Rob Halford, industrial project. It's called Voyeurs. This record, here I am again. I heard I Am a Pig, didn't care for it at the time. Um, I've grown to like this record quite a bit more since then. But at the time, I'm sorry, everybody, I don't like Nine Inch Nails. I don't care for industrial so much. Maybe I should give it a second look at this point. Um, but, here we got John Five again on this record. And it, it's it's not Priest, and it's not Halford, it's not Fight. It's something different. And in 1998, that's about all you got. That's all you can do is, if I want to hear the metal god, I got to listen to this, for as far as new music goes. So, I mean, like I say, I just gave this a listen maybe a month ago, and I was pleasantly surprised, and I actually kind of wondered, why was I so against it at the time. But, you know, it, it this point in time, that was what was going on in the hard rock heavy metal community, as far as I was concerned. It was hard to get the good stuff, and so you know, I bought every one of these uh, at the time. Iron Maiden, Virtual 11, the second record that they did with Blaze, and I would say Future Real is one of their stronger songs, a good opener. I don't know how high up I would put it on the the list of Iron Maiden songs, but uh, Lightning Strikes Twice is pretty good. I know the Angel and the Gambler is like a you know I don't know, cult favorite or whatever you want to call it. Uh, they've done the Klansman live lately when Two Worlds Collide's pretty good. You know, again, good record. Not that great, not you know, and another trend. Bruce is back in the band right after this, but Iron Maiden came out with a record, and I was dying for the hard stuff, so that's what I got. Here's kind of a wild card. Izzy Stradlin, 117 Degrees. Um, Izzy left Guns N' Roses, as we know. Gilby Clarke filled in for him, almost, not too far into their tremendous success. And Izzy's a bit of a strange guy, and I know, like, on the Guns N' Roses reunion just recently, Axl was perplexed, as not really being able to get a read on Izzy, if he's in or if he's out. And turns out he just showed up for the couple of shows, or whatever it was, the one where they had Adler, so they had all the originals. His Juju Hounds record is more blues based, uh, you know, southern rock, country rock sounding kind of thing. But it is definitely Izzy on guitar. That was the previous one, and then this one here I thought was a little more. There's some southern fried stuff on here, but this one here I think is, I don't know, it's a toss up. I like the Juju Hounds one, and then I like this one too. The one that came after, not quite as much, but this one here is really good. He teams up with Rick Richards of the Georgia Satellites, and that's a guy that plays some pretty good, some hard and heavy blues guitar. Uh, and again, it's a great record, but it's not Guns N' Roses. We're sitting there all at this time, we're wondering when's the next Guns N' Roses record coming out, and it's of course it would be a while after that. Um, Another guy, and this is like straying a little bit, but this was on the list. John Mellencamp, Once Upon a Time, was a guy I really, really liked, and I was more into like the roots rock stuff than I am now. Um, these days I don't really even listen to Skinner too much. A little bit Molly Hatchet, I kind of like that. But I like this stuff here, and I I didn't really care for Springsteen so much, but I in that vein, I kind of like Mellencamp. And he had some big stuff in the 80s, like several records back to back to back that I thought were fantastic. Scarecrow, actually the one before Scarecrow was called Uh-huh, and that had Crumbling Down. And then he did Scarecrow, and then he kind of went more into what I think he's known for now, which is, Speaking for the Heartland, and the roots, more of a not pop sounding, but more root sounding. And the Lonesome Jubilee I thought was a highlight, and then he came out with Big Daddy, and I thought he started slipping, and then I kind of lost track of him. And I bought this one, and I'm sitting here right now looking at the track list, and nothing's familiar on here. So that's 1998 for you. A guy that at one time I knew a whole lot about everything he had going on, and I don't know, I bought it just, I think, because it's him. And then the last one, I think here's a real bright spot. Joe Satriani, Crystal Planet. This is the last one I'm going to go over. There's more on the list, but these are the ones I just, I thought, okay. So Satriani, when he burst on the scene, for me it was Surfing with the Alien, and I know he had the EP before that, and for me, Surfing with the Alien was just, it came down from heaven. It was just like, man, this is amazing. You don't need a singer. The guitar is really, everything is so melodic, and the guitar, fills in for the vocal line. It's just fantastic. And the titles of his songs are, they you can tell by listening to him that that's the title. And I just thought he was great. And then he had the Flying in a Blue Dream. And then years went by, and I didn't. You know what? I take that back. The Extremist. I really like The Extremist. I kind of skipped Flying in a Blue Dream. I didn't get that until years later. But The Extremist, I absolutely loved. That I think was as good as Surfing with the Alien, in my opinion. So some years go by, and then along comes 1998, and Crystal Planet hits the market. And I did not get this right at 1998, I don't believe, but I not too long after that, I've had this, I've had this a good long while, and I remember thinking, hey, Satriani keeps coming out with new music, and I fell behind, and I said, okay, I want to see what he's doing at the end of the 90s, I guess, or around 2000, and so I ended up getting this and Engines of Creation, and it's a really good stretch for him. This is it's hard for me to have anything top Surfing with the Alien or The Extremist. This ain't bad. I can put this on and play it all the way through, and it's good for watching sports, or reading stuff on the computer. It's just brilliant. And then of course, if you sit and focus on it, it's mind blowing. So this one took a little while for me. It didn't hit like Surfing with the Alien did, but I really, really like this thing. Let me think. The opener, Up in the Sky, I really like that. But Love Thing, I like that one quite a bit. I don't know. So there's our journey back to 1998. I'm sitting there seeing this stuff, it's it's not gone, the stuff I love, but it's not like it was. And just a really, really strange era. And I remember, I want to say it was in 99 when we saw Poison, Rat, LA Guns, and Great White all at the Universal Amphitheater, it's no longer there at Universal Studios. They flattened it, and that's where Harry Potter is now. But that was, I think that was in 99. We went to that show, and it was like, we traveled down there, and the theater was absolutely full, and it looked like that, 1987, 88, something like that. All the people were there. Everybody was, it was like stepping back in time. It was like, see, it's not gone. There it is. And since then, these so-called legacy acts have been out there, a lot more, and they've been teaming up and stuff like that. But through the middle to the end of the 90s, boy, it was rough. It was a rough stretch. And, this was what I had if I wanted to hear the new music. And I don't, I like every one of these records except the Mellencamp one because I can't think of anything that's on it. But, it just wasn't the same. It just wasn't the same. That it's Van Halen, but it's not Women and Children First. It's Iron Maiden, but it's not Power Slave. So on and so forth. And the Halford didn't sound anything like Priest. That was it. That's what it was like. Strange, strange, strange era. And I'm glad I made it through there. Uh, and I'm glad things turned around. And the problems we have now is how long can they go, and how well are the voices holding up, and so on and so forth. But I'll take what we have now over 95 to 98. That was the dark days. That was a real rough stretch. So anyway, there's a look back. We'll talk more about tomorrow, which is a huge anniversary for me, when I saw Van Halen on the 1984 tour in Florida. It was the third show of the tour, and I saw that in Lakeland, Florida, and I'll be back to discuss that in a bit.